Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to go ahead and make this toy race car. This car has 9 parts. We're going to break this video series into 9 parts. We can show you how to make all the parts and put them all together. This is a pretty fun project. Great for your first couple tries at modeling here. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start with part number 1, the chassis. You can see here part number 1 is just a rectangular prism that is 4.33 inches wide by 1.180 inches tall by 1.70 inches deep. So let's go ahead and first start off by creating a document. I call this document race car. You'll notice that I like to do everything in all caps. It makes documentation easier and clearer in the long run. Just a habit of mine. I encourage you to do the same. So we're going to go ahead with, as with every model, go ahead and start by creating a sketch. We're going to create this sketch on the, we'll start with the front plane. We're going to call this sketch chassis. And we're not going to hit that check mark yet, because if you hit that check mark, then you lose your sketch. So we're going to hit I'm going to click on in a white space just to get things moving. Now I'm going to go ahead and rotate the workspace so I'm looking straight on it. I can do that by tapping the front button here or tapping the N normal to key on the keyboard. We don't need the work planes anymore, so we can go ahead and toggle those off by hitting the P on the keyboard, or we can toggle them on and off on the left hand side here. Take a look at our measurements again. What do we have? We had a rectangle that was 0.170 inches deep. So I'm going to use my center point rectangle, R. We're going to go ahead and draw that from the center point of the origin. And we're just going to click on it here and then grab the dimension tool, D. And that thickness of that part was 0.170 inches thick. And the length of that part is 4.330 inches long. So 4.330 inches. And that creates the part we're looking at. We drew the right side of that part. If you look at the assembly, I'm going to go ahead and draw the width of that part, or the height as shown here, 1.180 inches wide. So we're going to get that thickness by using the extrude button, tapping the space we want to extrude. Let's go ahead and make that symmetric just to keep everything centered on the origin plane. And that's going to be our chassis. It's a solid, it's a new component. That distance was 1.180 inches. I believe, let's double check that. 1.180, yep, that's correct. And there you go. There's the first part, which we're going to rename here chassis. Don't forget, when you're working here, we're working in 3D space. So there's your empty world, there's your front plane, top plane, right plane. We produce sketches, like our sheet of paper to draw on, and then once we create our sketch, which includes all the lines and curvatures that makes up our shape, we finish that sketch and then double click, and create an extrusion of that sketch to the thickness we want. So there we go. There's our first part. Nice and easy. Now we're going to go ahead and hit the, just turn that origin off. It's coming on. Now we're going to go ahead and go back home to the main page and make part 2. Part 2 is the rear hood. There's part 2. Part 2 is the rear hood, and it's another rectangular prism. It has one dado cut out of it, so that's going to go on the back of the part. So let's go ahead and draw that. So first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and identify where we want to draw it. So we'll draw this as if we're looking down at it and pulling up. So rear hood. Oh, how about I type correctly? Then we're going to click on that space. So we're going to draw. Notice that I have to have that identified. There you go. So we want to create we're creating it on the face of the chassis model, right? Go straight down at it. We're going to create that rectangle. Let's go back to our main page to see how those fit together. Yep, okay, so it's the same width that it sits at the back of the part. So it's the same width as the part, and it sits at the back part. So we're going to go ahead, and this time we're going to use the corner rectangle, letter G, and we're going to make sure we see that yellow dot. That's a snap tool that tells us, hey, I'm going to grab and put it right there. So I'm going to click and release, move the mouse down, and then whenever I see the yellow line on the side here, I'm going to click and release. Make sure you do not click on the yellow midpoint dot, otherwise you won't be able to make the next adjustment. I'll click here and hit the DT tool so I can dimension the length of that. Then let's go check our part and see what that measurement was. That measurement was 1, not quite 2, so 1.9, 1.9, 50, 1.950. So 1.950 inches. And that's it. That's it. We don't have to dimension the width because it was already set. If we try to dimension the width, you'll see that it's grayed out. If I try to give it a different number, it probably won't even let me. It's not even going to let me. If I try to give it a different value, it'll turn red. And that's it for the rear hood. So let's go ahead and extrude that rear hood. Uh-oh. My measurement stuck. 0.95. Yeah, 1.950. Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and extrude that. So hit the extrude button. And again, that's the rear hood. This time we're going to go ahead and click the surface of the object, where we already do that. You'll notice that it switches from new to add, which would add on new material. This is going to be a not add on to the existing material. It's going to be a new part. So I'm going to click new. This is going to be a blind. We're going to go all the way over. Matter of fact, let's go ahead. Yeah, the blinds where you give it a direction. That's a one direction extrusion. So we'll need to come over to the paper part and find out what that height was that we're going to extrude it, which is a distance of 0.540. We're going to go 0.540 inches tall. And that's everything we need. Let's go ahead and rename that to rear hood. The last thing we need to do is put that rectangular cut in the rear hood, that little dado cut there. So let's see, what do we know about that cut? It is 1/4 inch tall, and it is located 1.270 inches from the front. So we're going to create a sketch right here on the side, and it is 1.270 inches. So let's click a rectangle, and that is 1.270 inches from the front. So dimension tool, Remember, you can get to your dimension tool quickly just by tapping the D key. So 1.270 inches. And then it was 1/4 of an inch tall. So from the top to the bottom was 5 inches. And then what was the other dimension they give us? The next dimension they give us is the distance from the end to the end of the opening. So that dimension is 0.1470. 1 in 470 thousandths. 1.470. We're going to dimension again from the end to the end of the opening at 1.470. And that is everything you need to finish that out. And so that's the we'll call that the rear axle hole. And the check there. We're going to go ahead and extrude that. So hit the extrude button. So cuts and extrusions are the same thing. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that space that we're going to extrude. Call that rear axle hole. We're going to make that a remove. And instead of going blind, we're just going to go through all. And that cuts everything through. You can see we're all done. And that's it. So that's the first 2 parts in our model.